you don't really know who you are or what you are until you put a really big challenge in front of you.
Fear is an asset and ally here to help you be magnificent.
This crazy, silly, stupid idea to run across the Sahara Desert.
You did make it this time, but you said if you didn't make it, you would try again and again.
Everybody's connected to nature, connected to music, to their families, and now we're going to build a world that doesn't have racism and war and starving kids.
I kept telling myself, run at me, and just keep smiling.
Selfie stick? No, just holding it with my hand here, no selfie stick. I'm not that sophisticated. I'm recording now. This is, just so you know, I think I mentioned this to you. I usually, all of our podcasts are done in person on a walk or a run, and then we invite the listeners to walk or run with us. Got it. We are in new times now, and so this is the first podcast that I've ever recorded not in person.
Oh, wow.
And I'm walking, though, as you can probably tell.
Yes.
Totally optional for you to be walking on your part, but I hope that whoever's listening out there puts in their headphones and comes along for the walk with us. Okay. So let's start just by introducing who you are. Introduce yourself.
Okay. I'm David Hessekiel. I'm the president of a company called Cause Marketing Forum, Inc., which I started about 18, 19 years ago, and we produce the Peer-to-Peer Professional Forum Conference, as well as the Engage for Good Conference, and both of those have year-round digital information services to provide good information to people doing good stuff.
And you are very much at the center of the charity universe. You've been a resource for just every charity out there. People like me trying to help charities. You're actually, want to share, you know this, but I want to share this with the people listening. You are, I think, the second person that I told about Charity Miles when I had the idea.
Wow.
Close. And I think I just was looking online. I was doing my research and I found you, and I emailed you, and you were gracious enough to chat with me back then. And it was 9 years ago almost, which I cannot believe. It's hard for me to imagine. But because you're such, first of all, actually, we should probably start with this. And you and I already spoke about this a couple days ago, but why don't we give everybody out there a little public service announcement on the coronavirus? Because you just went through it.
Yes. I was determined that I was going to be as mean and lean as Gene. But I just could not do it. So I decided that I would become a coronavirus sufferer, and I lost 15 pounds. So
no, the coronavirus diet. Exactly.
But I live in what is generally a part of the world that people don't know anything about, Westchester, New York, north of the city. Turns out this is one of the epicenters of this terrible disease pandemic. And whether I got it here or on travel beforehand, March 26th, my quarantine began, and I was very lucky in the sense that it never went to becoming a respiratory problem, which is killing so many people or forcing them to be intubated and alone in hospitals. It's just a horrible situation. But it was lousy. A lot of fever, a lot of pain, a lot of aches, and I am now working again, and just so thankful for every breath of fresh air that I'm taking.
So I am grateful for it too. We were actually, the people listening out there, I was supposed to have a call with David a few weeks ago, and he emailed me and said, sorry, I can't make it. I'm not feeling well. And I was like, oh man. And I was just thinking about him the whole time. And when I finally got an email from him that he was through the other side, I was so relieved. So it's one of these kind of personal, we're all going to know people that are going through it, and just makes it hit home even that much more why we need to be taking these extraordinary measures right now. So grateful that you're doing okay.
Thank you.
And so you mentioned that you are the founder of the Peer-to-Peer Fundraising Forum. And every year you have a conference. I believe this year was in Austin, Texas.
Yes.
And thankfully, I think you got it in just before everything
It was amazing.
Right.
The world has changed in 6 weeks. We
Right.
held this event, was the largest, our 14th, our largest one we'd ever had. About 600 to 650 people gathered from all over the world and US and Canada in Austin, Texas. And it was the last week of February. And at that time, people were sort of conscious there was this thing in China, particularly starting to creep into Italy, this virus, but it wasn't, we weren't talking about it as a major subject of the conference. And the week later, the world had changed. And 2 weeks later, people were realizing that they were going to have to start to postpone or cancel their spring season.
Right.
And oh my gosh, how life has changed since then. There is no spring season. None of those in real life, let's all get together and breathe on each other experiences are happening. And everybody is, exactly, everybody is, yeah, look at you. You're walking, are you in Brooklyn or in Manhattan?
I'm in Manhattan.
Yeah,
I'm by Pete's Tavern.
I haven't seen a damn person.
There's nobody out here.
It's amazing.
It's amazing. Yeah. Usually when I've recorded podcasts in New York City before, you hear just construction, and you're in person, but you hear construction and cabs and people, and it's all this noise and commotion. But, you know, I could, stand in the middle of the street right now and nothing's happening.
Unreal. I live in a little town, Rye, New York, and I went out to do a couple of errands. Did not find toilet paper. I came back. My wife was highly disappointed. Usually in this cute little town that I live in, if you want to park, you're circling the block. 10:30 in the morning, a ghost town.
Yeah.
You parked anywhere. You couldn't go in anywhere, but you could anywhere you want. Oh, I heard a sign.
There's one, huh? Yeah. I'm not sure if they're trying to get my attention or anything, but so part of the charms of doing a Zoom podcast on the walk is that you froze up a little bit there when you were talking about the forum at the end. But so the peer-to-peer fundraising forum is like a conference that you have every year. You're bringing people in from all the different charities, all the major charities, smaller charities, medium charities, come in to talk about what they're doing with respect to peer-to-peer fundraising, which is the type of fundraising where, regular people like me go out and ask our friends to sponsor us for a marathon, for a walk, a bike event, host a party, a golf thing, where regular people like us are raising money. And obviously that's a key part of what Charity Miles is about, what a lot of our charity partners about. And you were talking about how the world has changed since you had that at the end of February. I'm very curious, and I couldn't make the conference this year. I wanted to go, couldn't make the conference. What were people talking about? Like, what was the vision that people had for all the new and great things that were going to be happening in peer-to-peer fundraising?
Sure.
At the conference, and then hopefully we'll talk about how that may have changed.
Yeah, well, so we're in a period of transition. This group, when I started it, it was originally called, I'm not
the Run, Walk, Ride Forum.
Exactly, it was called the Run, Walk, Ride Fundraising Forum, and because there wasn't even the term peer-to-peer. Nobody knew what to quite call this, and even to this day, or at least until this year, the traditional walks were the overwhelming majority of the money that was being raised.
Right.
What's been happening and our most famous piece of research is we do something called the Top 30 report, one for US and another one for Canada, in which we are looking at these massive events. And it is still dominated by legacy programs that were based on a physical gathering of people. A lot of them have shrunk dramatically pretty much since 2009, between the economic crisis and just in 2009, you weren't walking around with your phone doing a podcast on Zoom.
Right.
Things have accelerated tremendously technologically, and so people's habits have changed. We're seeing some that have a lot of groups that are growing, and they're trying new and different things. One of them was this concept of what we call DIY, where instead of saying, hey, everybody, you can do whatever you want as long as it is walking in the park on the third Tuesday in June, because that's when we're organizing the event.
Right.
Instead, you would put out a platform and say, we love you as supporters, and we want to encourage you and support you in doing, as you were saying, a barbecue, doing a run in your town instead of in another town, etc. Dedicating your birthday to the cause, etc. And so that has been a subject. How do you do that effectively for some time? The challenge with it, frankly, has been, to quote one of my favorite movies, it's not true that if you build it, they will come. Right. Most of those programs, yes, they get, and again, for the largest groups, they were raising tens of millions, even hundreds of millions of dollars with their major legacy programs. For most of them, if they were raising a couple of $1 million through this DIY, which, believe me, I know for most charities would be a huge windfall, but it was not reaching the level.
Right.
So we're still experimenting with that. And then the other thing, that huge amount of attention, was live streaming, which has been a fascinating issue in terms of generationally, a lot, even though I'm probably the oldest person in the room at most of my conferences. I turned 60 this year.
Yeah.
But a lot of people in their 30s and 40s, and even they are not gamers. I mean, even though the gaming statistics.
Yeah, it's not my thing.
It's right. And so for a lot of them, they kind of poo-pooed this thing. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry with a huge number of people who are fascinated by not only playing games, but watching other people play games, right, or watching them do other streaming type activities. And Children's Miracle Network hospitals, St. Jude, and a number of others had raised substantial amounts of money. Extra Life at Children's Miracle Network hospitals was the first to actually hit our top 30, to break that. So they were raising about $15 million. So that was another big topic. But it's still, and there's a lot of groups investing in figuring out how are we going to make this work for us. One of the huge changes now is that we cannot do, this year at least, so many of the things that we have traditionally done where we're gathering large people. What better than doing live streaming or using other forms of technology to virtualize your event?
Right.
So if we were holding this event now, that would be at the
only thing talking about.
Exactly.
Yeah, we're going to be talking with Tiltify about some of the things that they're doing on the gaming stuff. I think it's really interesting. I love that they're able to raise a lot of money for charity through anything that raises a lot of money for charity is good. But I'm also curious, like, if we're raising money for cancer, heart disease, diabetes, I don't know if we want to be encouraging people to be sitting down and playing that many video games, because that's, we got to be active. So
that is
ounce of prevention, pound of cure.
I can't believe. Yes, I believe. I agree with you, but I think that there's a leap. I remember when I first heard about this, and I'd say, I just don't even get it. Why are people going to sit and watch other people play? And then I went, you know what?
Well, we watch people play football, hockey, basketball. Yeah.
I mean, sitting on the couch, downing a beer and having your chips, watching people play football is no healthier than
sitting and watching people play video games.
Right.
Absolutely.
So, and for a lot of people, and younger people in general, it's not as if this is the only thing that they do.
Right.
So yes, within moderation, I think it's terrific. I don't think that these programs are designed so that they will be chaining people to their couches and they'll never be getting up again. Right.
That's what I hope.
I hope.
But I think it's great that they're able to raise that much money. It's really incredible when you see like a gamer, is able to raise $1 million in 24 hours for Children's Miracle Network. Just incredible. So I do salute that, absolutely. So And yeah, definitely with us, we've been seeing like a lot of charities reaching out to us that are looking to virtualize their walking and running and biking events. And, you know, it's a big moment for us to hope to rise to that occasion.
Yes.
I'm curious, like, what are you seeing and hearing from the charities that you're speaking with as to how, other than like what you said about they having to change their events, how is this affecting them? And how do you think it might affect them in the future? Is this going to be like a temporary blip, or is this like a demarcation point where this is?
If we knew whether this was a temporary blip, you and I would go invest in one way or the other, and we'd be able to retire right now. Which, of course, I know you'll never retire because I love what you do. But so there's a few things that I've noted. One is we are produced in the airplane while it's flying. This is so fast. Over the course of March, we did a lot of work on this, and I was even doing it from my sickbed until I completely fell apart. And we would be having conversations with major charities, and they would be telling us about what they were doing, which was based on a conversation they might have had 15 minutes before, and there was absolutely no evidence of it on their website because they were, you know, working in real time and trying to catch up. So first of all, if you all are feeling like, oh my God, we are just constantly chasing the rabbit around the track and not getting anywhere, it's unbelievable what we're all being asked to do in terms of change management, and literally producing the stuff. And I know your team is working overtime to make this happen. So that's one thing that I've seen, which is that people in organizations are not being misleading, but you know, they've got to keep up some enthusiasm and support, but often they have to be talking about what's coming.
Right.
The other thing that as things are starting to truly emerge, that some programs are better formed, what we're really finding is although the scenario has changed and the technology that we're using has changed and the way that of what we're asking people to do has changed, some basic principles of fundraising and peer-to-peer fundraising remain true. So for example, you can't do everything, although it is tempting. And in fact, one of the great disciplines that was always being repeated as we were talking with people at peer-to-peer in the past was, you've got to focus on your best fundraisers, on your best supporters. You love them all, but there are certain people in the analog days of the walk who literally just showed up for the banana, walked around the track, and didn't raise $1. And they may be wonderful people and good to have the supportive members of your community, but if you've got limited time and resources, you've got to spend extra time on going after those people either you know from experience will give or lead or do, or that because they fit a certain profile that you've realized they're worth your chips. And a great example of that was the Pancreatic Cancer Action Network, which is, they're using the slogan, their color is purple. So they're saying, purple is the new black. You know, it's the new hot thing. But a lot of what they're doing is really upping their relationship with their best supporters. Another thing is, be a smart and not stick in the mud marketer, which is to say, you've got to iterate, especially when you're doing digital communications. Some things seem like they will work and don't. And if you are monitoring that, getting feedback from the marketplace, and then making changes to try to improve, that will serve you well, as opposed to simply saying, here it is, and we're rolling it out, and that it's static. So, you know, digital is very different. I was in the magazine industry for 10. Remember magazines? You've heard of magazines.
I've heard of those.
You know, it was, you know, you were stuck 3 months in advance. Somebody would place an order to put an ad in your magazine, and you hope that the world didn't change in the interim, versus digital, where we have the ability to make changes. So you've got to be making changes, and a great example of that in terms of doing a lot of work on Facebook, working with Tiltify, which you mentioned before, is the St. Baldrick's Foundation, which is famous for head shaving events to raise money for pediatric cancer research. And then the third is from a group that well, the March of Dimes, which was one of the first and fastest movers in terms of announcing, because they were famous for doing March for Babies.
They are March. They're the March of Dimes. They're like the original walking event.
And they said, we're virtualizing the whole thing. Now, that's another example of wonderful, I know is a friend and client of yours, Alan Brogdon. We were talking about this. He was very gracious to spend some time with me. And I mean, he talked about the vision, which they're implementing, and you're a big part of it now. But at the time we were talking about it, basically it said they were going to virtualize the damn thing. They didn't know exactly how that was going to work, and they were working really hard. One of the devices that they're using to try to get, again, because if you just put it up there and you don't stimulate people and make it fun, we're all, I think there's the majority of us, well, my present company excluded, most of us are good people, and we want to do the right thing. But there's a million causes out there. There's a million things to do, even in being trapped in our homes. And so they are using a lot of gamification. For example, they have created a March Madness bracket challenge with a lot of competition between it, and that will stimulate people to take action in a way that if you didn't make it engaging, if you didn't capture their appetite for being out there, they might have the intention of doing, but they might not act on it. And so I think that they get it, and I'm very curious to see how it plays out.
Yeah. Last question for the podcast is, we're all craving a return to normalcy. But on some hand, I've been thinking about things that I don't want to go back to normal. There's certain things that I don't want to go back, because normal is what got us into this mess in the first place. If we keep doing what we were normally going to do, what's going to change? So what are some things, or at least one thing in the charity space, that you hope doesn't go back to normal?
Wow, that is a great question, for which I don't know what the answer. I think that, to flip it a little bit, this horrible situation, if there is a silver lining to this cloud, it is that it has accelerated certain processes, certain movements in terms of embracing live streaming, in terms of a more individualized or DIY orientation that a lot of groups had paid service to, but really weren't there. And for good reason. It's when you've got a successful program that is raising a lot of money in a more analog way, it's a drug, and it's very hard to say, well, I'm going to really put a lot of resources against doing something else and get very little return. I do hope that we're going to be able to gather together and do things together. There's community that is very different from all being by ourselves. But on the other hand, we are now, I think, going to be building the infrastructure where this kind of relationship with supporters will become more important, more central, and we won't, we will continue to grow it.
All right, thank you very much. And then actually, maybe one last thing real quick, which I forgot to ask. The people who are listening to this podcast don't just work for charities. Most of the people who are listening to this are supporters of charities. So what would you say, what do you wish that they knew and understood about the charity so that they can best help the organizations that they love and support?
Well, the whole concept of peer-to-peer fundraising that we talk about at the Peer-to-Peer Professional Forum, which is peer-to-peer.com, is that individuals, every charity, frankly, would like to be able to just do major gifts, to walk into the office of gazillionaires and have them write a check for $20 million. It is incredibly efficient. The ROI is amazing, but obviously there's a lot of competition for the attention of those people.
Right.
And there are a lot of people who can give modest amounts, but who can, through this multiplier effect, through this network effect, be the stimulus for raising substantial amounts from their network of people. And that you do not have to be Michael Bloomberg to be an important player in terms of making an impact on a charity. And even in the COVID infected world that we live in, that remains true. And in fact,
probably more true than ever.
More exactly. I was going to say, the amounts may be different. God knows all of our finances are screwy, but by bundling in that sense, by reaching out to your network in an appropriate way, you're really important. And you should feel very proud and excited to be able to support something that is important to you and your family through this mechanism.
Excellent. Well, I want to thank you very much for taking the time to share that with all of us. That's a great point to end on. And again, I want to thank you for all the support that you've given me through the years, all the insight that I've learned from you and the different forums, and for being that initial voice that I went to, that initial ear that I went to 9 years ago when I had the idea. So
I'm so glad. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
Excellent. All right, David, thank you very much. Thanks to everyone who's walked or run with us. Hopefully you've enjoyed this. Get outside, clear your head. Every mom matters.